Didn't you think they were just going to jam it through?
They jammed it through the House the first time. I thought that there was an opportunity for a conference and actually had that discussion with other members.
Oh my gosh.
And the vice president as well.
Did the vice president suggest that they would do it?
Girl, bye.
Did not.
Republican Lisa Murkowski of the state of Alaska, who threw all Americans under the bus in exchange for special carve-outs for her state in Trump's big, beautiful bill, was asked point-blank period from Manu Raju of CNN if she regrets voting for this piece of legislation through the Senate and passing it through the House and then on to the president's desk. And spoiler alert, she doesn't. She doesn't regret it. She doesn't feel bad. In fact, she thinks that she's some kind of American hero for creating these futile carve-outs for rural hospitals and healthcare that are going to be completely washed out when this legislation takes full effect in a couple of years and kicks millions of Americans off of health insurance and results in the deaths of over 50,000 Americans annually. I want to play this clip for you guys so you guys can watch it with me, and then we'll come back and talk about it and give some final thoughts on all of this. But yeah, here's Lisa Murkowski talking to Manu Raju.
Given that it passed and the people can suffer health care cuts and food stamp benefit cuts, do you regret voting for the Senate pass?
Manu, I did everything that I could to try to improve that bill. Is it the bill that I would have designed? Of course not. But I had a couple choices. Either try to make it less bad, which I think that I did, not only for the people of Alaska, but for the country when we were able to double the funding for the Rural Health Transformation Fund. I think that's going to be help. That's going to help not only these hospitals, but all of the 50 states.
Do you worry that people may lose their health care because of this bill?
That was what we were trying. That was what I was trying to do, along with others, to make sure that that is not going to be the case.
What do you think of people who say that?
But it is,
it's
Lisa.
naive to think that the House will make it better.
I don't think it's naive to suggest that processes like conference committees cannot happen. We do conferences. We haven't done them like we should.
But didn't you think they were just going to jam it through?
They jammed it through the House the first time. I thought that there was an opportunity for a conference and actually had that discussion with other members.
Oh my gosh.
And the vice president as well.
Did the vice president suggest that they would do it?
The vice president did not commit to it, but he heard me out. And I think it's important to recognize that.
Recognize what? That he heard you out? Somebody hearing you out and agreeing with you and taking into consideration what you're saying and actually going through with what you're suggesting is one thing. Hearing you is like, yeah, I heard you. I don't give a fuck. Next. Thank you for your input. You were heard. Fall in line. And you did. And you did. And now you want us to look at you some kind of hero? Oh, we doubled the funding? No, I live in Nebraska, as you guys know, and a hospital closed as a direct response to to the passage of this bill. Actually, the imminent passage of the bill, because they put out a press release saying that they were going to close down because it looked like the bill was going to pass. They knew it was going to pass, and they knew there was no viability for them to survive. So they closed that hospital. What are you going to do in that case when all these rural hospitals cannot care for patients within a 10-county radius? Right? 2/3 of the state of Nebraska live in the southeast corner of the state between Lincoln and Omaha, the Lincoln and Omaha Metro, and a little bit of the smaller towns surrounding the area. Everything west of that is just agriculture, farmland, rural America, where people do not have adequate access to not only healthcare, but things like broadband. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you want us to think of you as some kind of hero or some kind of savior of healthcare in some kind of capacity? No, Lisa, because that's completely futile. It's going to be completely washed out with all the other cuts. People try to say, oh, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Those are temporary, and those are going to expire in a couple of years when Trump is on his way out. And whatever the Democrat, if it goes back to a Democrat, the Democratic president coming in is going to have to assume liability, where people are going to think, oh, it's the Democrat that did this, which Lisa is probably going to be one of the Republicans to turn around and blame Democrats when all this shit starts to hit the fan.
We have two bodies here, and when there are differences between the bodies, what happens is you work it out. Sometimes it's an open conference process. Other times it's what we call ping-ponging back and forth. And so, no, it was not naive to suggest that it could have happened.
No, it was. That's the thing. She created these special carve-outs for Alaska because she was a holdout. And they said, well, what do we need to do to get your support? And she said, well, this is what I need for the state of Alaska. And now she's trying to flip the script and say that she did it for the betterment of everybody, which is completely false. Let me play this clip for you guys.
Senator Paul said that that your vote was a bailout for Alaska at the expense of the rest of the country.
Oh, my God.
That's what Senator Paul said.
Question was easy.
Senator, we've got the.
I didn't say it, ma'am. I'm just asking for your response.
My response is I have an obligation to the people of the state of Alaska. And I live up to that every single day. I fight for my state's interests, and I make sure that Alaskans are understood. I work hard to take care of a state that has more unique situations, more unique people, and it's just different.
So Alaska is just different. You guys are just much more special than everyone else in the country. So creating these carve-outs that are going to be a complete wash anyways was worth throwing millions of Americans off of healthcare. It was worth over 50,000 lives cost yearly in this country because people are not going to have access to the medical care that they need. Really, Lisa? That's crazy, sis. No. And this is the whole broader part of this. I don't know if she's going to survive re-election, which it's probably cynical of me, but also kind of realistic to think that in the midterms 2026, you would hope that people do not forget what happened. But it seems like everybody catches amnesia when election season rolls around and votes in the same Republicans that turn around and gutted all their benefits, right? Voting against their own interests. When Lisa Murkowski comes up for re-election, I bet you they're going to vote her back in. The same thing with people like the career politicians that have been there forever who have done a bunch of shady things. Their constituents still send them back. And for what? More gutting? More suffering? More pain at your expense? Or more money for the top 1% billionaires of corporations? This bill was the largest upward transfer of wealth. And people said, oh, it's okay. We're going to get no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. You're not going to get extra pay in your paycheck every 2 weeks because of this. You're going to get a tax credit at the end of the year where they're going to look at, oh, maybe we're going to give you a little bit more of a refund, or maybe you're going to have to pay in a little bit less. You're not going to get $1,200 extra every month if you work $1,200 worth of overtime this month, next month, until whenever. However, it's all temporary. The tax cuts for the top 1% billionaires and corporations, that's permanent, baby. Y'all voted for that. At the expense of your health care, at the expense of your food stamps, at the expense of your livelihood and the livelihood and futures of your children. That's what you voted for. I pray to Jesus Christ that people do not forget what happened here when the midterms roll around in 2026 and when the presidential election turns around in 2028. Because the only way to undo this is if the Democrats get power. And again, to the Democrats, if you guys do get the power, wield that fucking power. Don't be afraid. That's a constant thing with the Democrats too. Once they get power, they're afraid to wield that power. Oh, we don't want it to look this way, or we don't want it to look that way. We got to be bipartisan. No, clearly the rules don't apply. The rules don't apply anymore. This is a whole different ball game. And when election season comes around, nobody better catch amnesia.